This is Talking Drupal, a bi-weekly chat about web design and development by a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This is episode 4 of Exploring Drupal 8, Intro to Module Development. So, welcome back, guys. How's everybody doing?
Hey, Steve. Good morning.
So, I'm glad to see that Mike and Nick returned again for episode 4. Thank you. We didn't scare you away.
Thank you.
Mike, we can't hear you. We're gonna have to stop this, I think, or I'll just edit this out later. You're really soft.
Okay, hang on one second.
I don't think it's coming through you. Tap your mic.
No, usually it comes through my.
No, it is coming through there. It's coming through your mic. It's really soft. I don't know if you can do anything about it.
Let's take a look. Was it soft before when we were not recording?
I don't remember you saying anything.
I guess so then. I was wondering. I was saying stuff, and no one was commenting.
No, it didn't seem this soft. I could hear you.
I'm gonna close out and come back in.
All right.
You want to just stop the recording so it's easier to?
Nah, it's just as easy to just
Oh,
edit it.
if you stop it and start it again,
Yeah, it's a pain in the neck.
Okay.
What do you use to edit, Steve?
I'm using ScreenFlow for this. It's the easiest way to, because I'm not doing too much video editing, just cutting, pasting, putting some text overlays. So I'm using ScreenFlow, which works really good.
Cool. You guys have a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
That last week?
That last week. Did we talk after?
Yeah, we did.
We did talk after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Jesus.
How dare you ask us about Thanksgiving?
How was your summer?
Now we're in full Christmas flow.
I had Joan, my wife, and I invited my mom up for dinner to kind of have a surprise birthday cake too, because her birthday's next week. And so my mom always makes ice cream cakes for all of us because of me, because I hate regular cake. So she, growing up, so all my brothers and sisters always get it. So my wife made an ice cream cake for her, and it came out really nice. And apparently she asked me if fluff was like frosting, and I said yes, but I didn't understand because she doesn't know what fluff is. They don't have that in Colombia. So I said yes to something, not understanding the question maybe. So she put fluff on it. It actually came out really good. It tasted really good. But
a fluff frosted cake?
Yeah, well, ice cream. So
Ice cream. Okay.
It tasted really good.
Nice.
It didn't spread as well as you might think. Considering it's a spread, but
All right, speak, Mike.
All right, any better?
No.
You probably need to go into your computer settings and your sound settings. You can change the the audio input of your microphone.
Yeah, let me see. I'm gonna top downstairs real quick. I'll be right there. I'll be right back.
Maybe he can bring you some breakfast on the way down.
Yeah, for me breakfast.
Catch me a bagel.
I'll mute myself when the show's actually going on and I'm coughing. But yeah, that's also why we went to the Christmas tree lighting.
What is why?
Because my mom was up here.
Oh.
And it's like 3 blocks away.
Your mother doesn't live that far, right?
No, like
Yeah.
25 minutes maybe.
Right.
any better?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. That's good. My IT guy came and fixed it.
Yeah. He's good. You just snap your fingers and he shows up. He's behind
You want to talk about support?
Yeah.
Black Mesh has got nothing on Salvaggio. All right. That's weird too, because that setting has always worked fine the way it was until this morning.
Well, I think it's different when I can hear all the different sound levels. So if it's a one-on-one conversation, you never really notice it.
But yeah, because this guy's got the like Heil setup over there.
That's right.
He's legit.
All right, you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Welcome back, guys.
Hey, Steve.
4. How's everybody doing?
Morning. Pretty good.
Good. So today we're going to be diving into what are we diving into again?
We're going to be talking about module development for the next 3 shows.
Great. This will be interesting to do this through audio, module development. Never did that before, so this will be fun for us and fun for our listeners. So our usual cast of characters is here. We have John Picozzi from Oomph. Welcome, John.
Good morning.
It's good to have you back on a Saturday morning. We also have Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Design.
Good morning. Looking forward to learning about Drupal 8 module development.
Yeah. And we also have our 2 new friends from Sago Solutions. We have Nick Salvaggio. Nick, how are you?
All right. Doing good. Good morning.
And Mike Marzavola. How are you, Mike?
Good.
So why don't we jump right in here? Let's get started. Let's talk about, I think today on episode 4 here, we're going to start with some higher level topics in module development.
Yeah, so this is going to really challenge us in terms of speaking about some of these conceptual ideas in Drupal 8 module development through audio. And it's going to be fun, kind of challenge us a little bit here. So in this first episode, we want to kind of talk about some of the higher level stuff, like Steve said. In the past episodes, we talked about site building and some theming. And in many respects, site building is changing in a very kind of evolutionary way. We have many of the same core concepts that we know and love or hate in Drupal 7, in Drupal 8. So we're just getting a lot of new things into the system, things like the fields and stuff like that. When we talk about the context of module development in Drupal 8, that changes completely. And I like to say that the changes within the module development space are revolutionary as opposed to evolutionary within the site building world. And there's a slew of reasons for that. We can spend a lot of time exploring the different aspects of these revolutionary changes.
How about if we cover the key ones?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the core aspect of, I guess, the high level aspect of the revolution is getting off the island. And this is something that Krell coined a number of years back. And it kind of stung for us because we're on Long Island and we were trying to get people to come onto the island at the same time. So we kind of like nixed that whole idea. We were going to like run ads and stuff like that. But
yeah, just what you need. Get off the island.
yeah. So that didn't work for us. But the idea of getting off the island was pretty much changing our culture and our community to look outside of in the greater PHP world to see what has been going on over the last 5 to 10 years. And traditionally, we've kind of siloed ourselves inside the Drupal space where we had a culture of we'll build it our own. We'll build our own tool to do a certain job. And during that time, PHP world was also evolving and changing, and new tools were popping up outside of Drupal. And some of these tools are really, really good. And in addition, PHP itself has been evolving. So when Drupal was first developed, it was developed for a much older version of PHP. PHP did not have the ideas of object-oriented programming and a bunch of other features. A lot of these tools that were quote-unquote off the island were leveraging a lot of these new features. So a lot of people in the community came together and after a lot of debate decided to start to embrace a lot of these external tools. And some of these tools things like Composer, which is a package manager for PHP. This allows us to pretty much bring in a lot of these dependencies. So you can think of Composer as the bridge off of the island for us to be able to actually bring in some of these tools that are being developed in their own space with their own communities, completely independent from Drupal.
And when you say bring them in, you literally mean bring them in at runtime. Bring them in. When you're talking about Composer.
Yeah, so Composer is like many other package managers out there, where there's a JSON file that keeps track of what tools you're bringing into the project, what versions are acceptable for the project, and then you pass a couple of commands like Composer install, and that will actually download all of those dependencies off of a website or service called Packagist, which is kind of a repository for all of these tools. So yes, these packages are in the Drupal project. They're brought in through Composer.
So in Drupal, we always talk about what's in core and what's in contrib. Now, a good part of core is contrib from the bigger community.
Yes, yeah.
Not contrib in the terms of the Drupal contrib way, but in terms of the word contributed. And that's what Composer's doing, and what Getting Off the Island is. It's bringing in a lot of other tools from other people that have built, and they're supporting them, and we're just including them into the core of Drupal.
Right. Right.
Do you have a couple of examples of what Composer's pulling in for Drupal? Yes.
So there's a lot of different tools that are brought in. A couple I want to highlight. There is the biggest really is the Symfony components. So a lot of core Drupal 8 is built on top of Symfony components. A couple being the HTTP Foundation component, the routing component, the YAML component. These are all tools that are part of the Symfony project. And the Symfony project is kind of I guess you can think of them as two things in itself, where you have a full-blown, they call it the Symfony CMF, which is a content management framework, which encompasses, it's really an implementation, just like Drupal 8 is now, an implementation of these various components. And then you have the actual individual Symfony components. These components are available for us to use outside of Drupal. We can use them independently. I think one of the interesting ones is the HTTP Foundation. This exposes or really abstracts the idea of an HTTP communication in our PHP code. So traditionally, we would create a bunch of variables based on what we call superglobals in PHP, and those are those kind of capital letter underscore capital letter variables we use to grab things like the get variables, the session variables, and things like that. HTTP Foundation encapsulates that into a request and a response object that we have a bunch of methods on it, and we can kind of manipulate that HTTP communication within the context of that abstracted object.
Oh, that sounds...
Are they kind of like set and get kind of things?
Yes, yeah. So there's methods, there's setter methods, get methods, and things like that.
So I was just going to say, how is it integrated with the caching system, so you're not running into some of the same issues you used to run with session variables?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of new caching stuff going on in Drupal 8. So some of the newer developments. Just last week I was playing around with a big pipe piece that's doing some really interesting things. But yes, this will go through the caching systems that are in Drupal 8.
Very cool.
Yeah. So those are the big pieces. There is a lot of them. Things like the doctrine annotation system. We're going to be talking about that in the next episode, I believe, when we talk about plugins. The Twig templating system, which we covered in the last episode, that's now our templating layer. And there's a slew of others. If you wanted to get a full list, if you go into the core directory of Drupal 8 and you take a look at the composer.json file, there's a require block in that. And that require block will list out every single component that we're bringing into core. So things like Symfony routing, the validator, the process element, the process component, and a bunch of others that are in there. And I think this is going to probably grow or shrink over time as new tools come available. I think the main point here is that really we can now leverage the greater PHP community in our world, which I think is going to really make our world better as a result.
So what is the biggest? So someone who's done module development work in Drupal 7, which I think all of us on this phone have, on this phone, I call this a phone. On this call.
Old school.
Yeah, old school. Yeah. What do you think is like the biggest change for someone who's gonna, open up PHP Storm and get started?
Yeah, so I think the biggest change is shifting our focus to think about our solutions in an object-oriented way. So traditionally in Drupal 7, a lot of our minds have been crafted to think about PHP in a very procedural way, where we have a .module file and we start implementing different functions within that file, and it's just a very procedural mind frame. Now, that's not to say that Drupal 7 doesn't take advantage of some object-oriented techniques. It does. A lot of contrib modules do too, things like views and all that. There's a lot of OO going on there. But when we talk about Drupal 8 module development, we're going to be really taking a lot of the things that we're doing in that .module file and not putting it in there. It's going to be within a class, within a source directory, within the actual module. So I think thinking in terms of objects, if any of us have ever worked with larger object-oriented systems like J2EE and things like that, there's these huge object hierarchies that you kind of need to learn. And I think from an exploring Drupal perspective, this opens up a whole world of exploration for us, where we can look at different interfaces that we can implement and just different classes that we can extend and really get into a this kind of larger world of different objects. And I think what that does for us too is it creates a much more consistent developer experience and set of APIs for us to leverage to develop our solutions. And I think that's huge. That may actually be the biggest, because now in Drupal 7, or I keep saying now, it's Drupal 8 is out, so it's not now anymore.
Right, yeah.
It's today. So yeah, I mean, in the past, we've just been very procedural, and a lot of the APIs that we develop against are not very consistent. So I think we have a nice consistent package available to us now with Drupal 8.
How do you guys recommend people who haven't done any PHP object-oriented development, how do you recommend them learning that? Do you have any websites or tools or training courses that you can recommend? Well, you don't now. We could just stick them into the show notes later.
Yeah. I mean, we can. Off the top of my head, I mean, we do some training, not to be selfish and promotional, but we do training, and a lot of times when I approach somebody that has no object-oriented background, I usually go in with a little bit of a primer on kind of the 4 pillars of object-oriented programming. Give a couple of examples. I love the shape example when you talk about a shape and the idea of a shape, and then extending that to be a circle, to be a square, and because that you can encompass a lot of functions around that, like calculate the area, which could be different depending on what type of shape you have, and all that type of stuff. There's also a slew of sites available. I can reference some in the show notes later on about learning object-oriented programming and things like that.
There's always those sites like Code Academy and sites like that do that kind of stuff. I know that why is the trainer skipping my mind right now? Drupal, not Drupal Easy. Maybe Drupal Easy does training. Who else is there?
Build a module.
Build a module. Thank you.
Yeah, Build a module. They got some good
stuff.
stuff.
They have a object-oriented series in there that goes through right from the beginning of what OO programming is, and it's probably 100 hours of video kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I have used Code Academy to kind of brush up on object-oriented coding, and they actually do have a really nice kind of walkthrough with demos and kind of lets you code as you're learning, which is really helpful. So
nice.
Okay,
awesome. Yeah, so I think learning all that stuff, going through those types of training, and just getting in there and start extending classes and things like that, see what happens is is really kind of beneficial. Also, within the context of your own Drupal installation, the examples module, which I'll probably reference a couple of times in these shows, has some pretty good examples of different ways to implement the various APIs in the system. So that's a good resource as well.
Yeah, once you're developing in Drupal 7, Drupal 6, the examples module has always been, a pretty foundational. I mean, I reference that all the time, so I imagine the same will be true for Drupal 8.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think too, speaking of these consistent APIs now, a lot of guys in the community are talking about the fundamental idea of Drupal 8 development is build a tool and then tell Drupal about it, or extend a base class and then tell Drupal about it. So understanding just that statement alone, you can get very far with developing solutions in Drupal 8.
Can you explain that? Can you explain that a little more? What you mean by that?
Sure. So the idea is that the foundation is laid within core for us to extend a bunch of different things. So for example, maybe a block or a form. There are base classes that implement an interface. An interface is basically a contract by the implementing class to say, I'm going to define these functions that you define in the interface. A lot of that foundation is in place within Drupal 8. So that when we build our tools within our own contrib modules, we can just extend those base classes and override the methods that the interface requires of us. So for example, if we create a form, we're just simply extending the form base class and then developing our form build function, our validator method. I shouldn't call it a function, it's a method, and our submit handlers, which is now a submit method within the class. Now that entire statement encompasses the build a tool section of that statement. So we build a tool by extending a base class. The base class is already defined within Drupal 8. Now, at that point, Drupal doesn't know about it yet. It will not do anything for us within our module. Now we tell Drupal about it. The way we tell Drupal about it is by mostly using YAML. And YAML files are all over the place within Drupal 8. So we had the way we define our routes, the way we define our menu links, the way we define our permissions, that's all done with YAML files within our modules. Also, a lot of our configuration is represented in YAML. So we're going to get a lot of experience in YAML in the future. So that YAML now is how we tell Drupal about the class that we just extended from some base class.
Okay.
Now, is it similar to new hook? Putting a new hook into a file, you have to clear cache and sometimes reinstall it to register that, or does it, once the YAML is there, it'll magically know that there's a new form, for example?
Yeah, from our experience so far, it seems like you want to clear cache as frequently as you do in D7, if not more, because there's some heavier caching going on in D8. So yes, like if you add a new route, which would be a new entry in your hook menu in Drupal 7, you do want to clear cache still.
Okay.
You just mentioned hook menu. So the hook system is, something that you rely on, and it's how you interface and customize Drupal in Drupal 7. So is it still there in 8?
Yeah, so the hook system is still there. And, for a lot of us, the idea of the hook system, I don't know, personally for me, it took a pretty long time for me to really grasp the hook system. You guys feel that way, or did it just click with you guys?
I think conceptually I understood it from the beginning, but like actually understanding which hooks to use when and where and exactly how it's inserting itself into the Drupal schema took a fair amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dumb. I'm dumb, so it took me a long time. I'm actually still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I came from a world of like thinking about like event listeners and things like that. So once I switched my mind to be like, okay, a hook is pretty much executing on some type of event in the system, I accelerated my understanding of it. But you're right, Nick, the figuring out which hook to implement when it was challenging. And honestly, it's still challenging. I'm sure there's still a slew of hooks that, we don't even know about that we've got to explore. But now in Drupal 8, the hook system is still there. So we still have the idea of hooks, but I think we're in a stage now where in Drupal 8, it's kind of evolving to the sense of a lot of hooks are going away. So things like hook menu, we will not be using hook menu anymore. We're going to be using the routing system, and we're going to go into that a little bit more in the next episode. But things like hook permissions, although I think hook permissions is still in D8, it is, I believe, deprecated in favor of using a YAML file within the module. So I think we're going to see a lot of these hooks kind of go away if they haven't already been taken out of the system. And things like info hooks, which has always been a challenge, where if you want to define your own entity or you want to define your own block, blocks is an interesting one because we had hook info and hook view to be able to a hook block view and hook block info to be able to define and render our blocks. That's changed now. We're not using info hooks for that. We're using more of the plugin system to be able to define that.
I'll have to learn about that. I've been working a little bit in D6 recently, and then had to build a block in Drupal 7, and then had to okay, is it the same as it was? Because I've been spending a fair amount going back and forth and confusing myself between Drupal 6 and Drupal 7. It would be nice to have a generally more consistent way to handle that in Drupal 8.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to be talking about that in a couple of episodes. The block system and the plugin system as a whole is very interesting. We still have a lot to learn about it as well, and we're definitely looking forward to it. But the idea of annotations, I feel like every time I bring that up with people, there's like a love-hate relationship there. Some people hate it and some people love it.
Yeah, it's definitely a sensitive, opinionated topic for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we got some of the basic concepts out of the way here in episode number 4. Episode number 5, what are we going to be looking at, Nick?
So we're going to be talking about a couple of the core kind of, I guess, components of a module, kind of the basic components. We want to look at the routing layer. We're going to look at forms, blocks, and we're going to talk a little bit about services.
Great. So if you've just found this episode number 4, you probably don't know what's going on here, but we're creating 6 audio shows and video shows that in the same talking Drupal format we always have, but we're focusing on Drupal 8, like a little jump starter to get you rolling. The first 2 cover site building and really what's new in core in Drupal 8. In episode 3, we cover theming. And now we're moving on to the module side of this, of Drupal 8. And we're going to have 2 follow-up webinars on January 12th and January 19th at noontime Eastern. If you're interested, you can go to exploringdrupal8.com and register for those webinars. The links are live now, so we can go ahead and do that. And guys, thanks for your time. John Picozzi, if someone wants to reach out to you and talk to you online, where can they get you?
They can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi and always on at umthink.com.
How about you, Nick?
You can find me online at Nixvan, Nixvan, pretty much everywhere.
Great. I'm Stephen Cross, always at Stephen Cross with a PH. We also have joining us Nick and Mike from Sego Solutions. Nick, where can people learn more about what you guys do and maybe get you to do some OO training with them?
Sure. So we're at segosolutions.com. That's SEGO solutions.com. I'm at Direct at Twitter. And we also have a platform at stackstarter.io, which we actually have a spin code available for these episodes. Talking Drupal is the spin code. So if you guys want to see some of the code that we're talking about, you can spin up a Drupal 8 instance and get into an editor really quickly.
How is this different than maybe using some of the other sites that like Try Me or one of those other sites that are out there?
Yeah, so you have full access to the code. So there's a web-based editor. We're using an open source project called Codiad, and you can get right in there and actually start developing in the browser. And we also have console access in the browser. We just improved console access greatly too from the last time you guys saw it.
So you basically have a full development environment.
Yep, full development environment.
Excellent. How about you, Mike?
I'm mmars9 at Twitter and PDO and pretty much everywhere. And yeah, like Nick said, check out StackStarter, great tool to learn about all sorts of different platforms, not just Drupal. But right now, the spin code that we have open for talking Drupal, it's obviously Drupal.
All right, guys. So we will talk to you soon for episode 5. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.